All right, so you got to write a college paper. Maybe it's your first college paper, maybe it's not, and you just haven't done a good job before. But I have the steps to write a good college paper, maybe even a great one. Here's how it's going to go. First of all, you got to choose topic. You should brainstorm topic ideas based on whatever the general idea of the paper is. Brainstorming means write down everything you think, even if it's bad, because it's a brainstorm. So get everything down first. Then go back through the ideas and rank them. Figure out which one makes the most sense, which one is your favorite, which one is your least favorite. Won't take you too long. Don't think too hard about it. Then you got to begin researching because you got to find out if you're going to be able to find the right stuff on this. So this is the kind of college paper that's going to require a few references and probably a number of paragraphs. So go to whatever place you would normally go to research and try to find a couple of things. If you can find some things on your favorite topic, great, you're probably good to go. If not, you might want to try your second favorite. If you've got time, check in with your instructor on your topic because they often have a lot of thoughts about topics. I know I always have a lot of thoughts about topics, so I can help you with that. In general, this process is probably going to take you an hour or two to do both the brainstorming and the general researching to figure it out. Now, on the researching part, you're not getting into depth yet. You're just finding out if sources exist, not necessarily learning everything about it. At this point, you should have a topic. Now, outline it. So you got to start a document with a broad outline of your paper so you know where you're starting and where you're going. If you have instructions or specifications or anything that tells you this information, like I expect that this paper will have an introduction and then talk about this and then talk about this and then talk about that, that's an outline. Take it, put it into a document. If not, you'll need to figure out where you're going to go. So if it's an arguments-based paper, lay out the arguments. Where's the conclusion going to be? Where's the stuff going to fit in? Be very general in this. You probably will change it later, but it will give you a starting point. And if you know things should be paragraphs or different areas or something like that, make sure it has its own bullet. This part shouldn't take that long, maybe up to an hour. All right, next up, you got to research it. You have to actually have the background information that you need to write this paper. So go to wherever it is that you go to find sources from the appropriate places. My science students very often go to scholar.google.com. It's good for a lot of other areas as well. If you have a college library, use it. Use their databases, use whatever you can. You still don't need to get super in-depth on sources at this level, but you should at least know what they're saying. So read or skim enough to get the main ideas of any given source. And also to get a sense of where it's going, so what kind of data it provides you. If you're a science student, I always say kind of like read through the intro, look at the figures in the results, and then kind of look at the end of the discussion to see where it lands. Whatever type of stuff you're doing, you'll get the same information. As you hit sources, if they have stuff you're going to use, add them to the outline. I would put the link that goes to wherever you are at directly right into it, along with a couple of bullet points of details. If you want to save yourself time, you could even start the citations. If they're pretty good, at the very end of your outline, you could start putting the citation information you're going to need. If you're using journal articles, many of them have, and already ready, here's how you would cite this paper. You could just copy and paste it in, and then that way, when you need to do it later, you can change the formatting of it, but it'll be very easy to fix. This part might take you a while. Researching is tough. You have to read through the research pieces. You have to get them in the right spot. You might hit some that are no good. Then you'll have to hit others. You should expect to spend a number of hours researching. I've put 3 to 4 hours for what I think is sort of a basic college paper. It could be twice that if it's a very research heavy kind of paper. So do make sure that you work at putting the time into this, and don't lose your sources. Make sure they go into the outline with the bits and pieces that go with them. So when you're looking for them later, you have them. All right. Once you've researched it, you got to draft it. You'll notice I don't say write it because that makes you think it's going to, be something good. The first version is never good. It's always kind of junk. It's a draft. Go with it. Also, start somewhere where you feel confident about the material and what you want to say. Usually that's somewhere in the middle, not the beginning. It's so hard to write introductions. Maybe it's the end if you know where you're going to conclude, but a lot of times people haven't figured that out yet. So I would say somewhere in the middle is a good place. Write out a few sentences based on what you remember reading and based on the details you gave yourself. Then go back to those sources, make sure they make sense with what you're saying. Cite as you go. So if you check your source and you write your paragraphs and then you put that little citation right in there, It'll all be set for you ahead of time. This is the part that's going to take a little while. If you get stuck in one spot, jump around, move to another place, go read something different. Check out what you're doing. Maybe for a little while you'll get stuck and you'll have to go back into research mode to fill in a few gaps, but at least you'll be moving forward. Definitely plan to do this in pieces. Writing is not easy, and some people have trouble getting really into it. Some people do very well if you write for like half an hour. Some people do very well if you write for about 90 minutes. I would not go much beyond that because that's when everything sort of starts to break down. So here, in terms of timing, you'll see that what I have is half an hour to an hour per expected page at the end, as in how long is this going to be. If it's a 3-page paper, it might take you 2 to 3 hours to write. If it is a 15-page paper, it might take you 15 hours to write. You should definitely plan for that. I mean, it doesn't, you'll have to see exactly how that kind of thing falls. But either way, put in the time. But this is just a draft. It doesn't have to be great. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to make it all the way through before you move on to the next part. Because the next part is review, revise it. After drafting it, read it through in order, because if you wrote it the way I said, you probably didn't do it in order, and make any obvious corrections or adjustments that are needed at that point. As in, things that don't connect to each other, make them connect to each other. Make sure the pieces do make sense in the order that you've put them in. Make sure the bits and pieces are where you want them to be. Great. Next up, have someone else read it. Definitely someone who's not you. Maybe you have a friend in the same class or in related class. Maybe you go get a writing tutor from wherever your school happens to have those. Ours is a Learning Commons. There's lots of people there. They're great to read through stuff. Listen to what those people have to say. They see it differently than you. Sometimes you'll completely disagree on something, and as long as you can back yourself up, you're fine. But generally, you're going to revise according to their recommendations. And then, after you've revised it according to their recommendations, read it again. And in fact, read it out loud if possible. If you need to record yourself and then listen to yourself, a lot of times people miss things that look okay on paper, but definitely don't sound okay when you hear them aloud. Reviewing and revising takes a little while. So especially if you're going to set up an appointment with somebody, it may take a few hours to go through this process, especially since you're going to have to read the paper all the way through. Be sure to allow yourself time for that. Finally, polish it. Go back to the instructions and specifications. Go back to everything your instructor ever said about it. Treat the whole thing like a checklist. Double check every item. This is where you make sure your font size is correct. This is where you make sure you've double spaced if you need to double space. This is where you make sure you've included all the bits and pieces that should have been in your outline originally, but did you remember them? Who knows? This is where you check your citation style and make sure those are in the right spot. This is definitely where you make sure all those little bits and pieces are in the right place. And then I would actually ask someone else to read it through one more time, just to look through the entire thing from beginning to end, make sure that nothing sticks out as completely disjointed in some manner, either the formatting or the writing. Finally, make sure the format is correct for submission. So that means, do you need to upload a document? Is it the right kind of document? Do you need to download a PDF of what you have? What do you need to do so your instructor will be able to read it? And assume that this polishing process will take you another hour or two, depending on if you're going to get somebody to read it through for you. The nice thing is that once you get all the way through this, turn it in. And then, you know what? Reward yourself because you did a great job because you wrote that paper. Love it.